Sego. Hello, my name is Danielle Soames, and I am Mohawk of Ganawage. I'm an ensemble member of Safe Harbors NYC, and I'm honored to present Safe Harbors NYC, 500 Years and Counting, a virtual series. Today's conversation will be led by our very own Nic Billey, who is also an ensemble member of Safe Harbors NYC. He is Choctaw, Creek, and Delaware. Nic will be interviewing Ben Geboe, a Safe Harbors NYC board member who is Yankton Sioux, on the effects of COVID-19 to our New York City Native community. Today's conversation and this virtual series will be dedicated to our very own Kevin Thomas Tarrant, who is Ho-Chunk of Wisconsin and Hopi of Arizona, and Victoria Yellow Wolf Tarrant, who is Mandan Hadassah. Both are very dear to our heart, and we're very dear to the New York City Native community. Their contributions are endless. They will continue as we continue, but we miss them very much, and we sadly lost them both to complications of COVID-19. We invite our viewers to burn medicine of your choice during our conclusion to this conversation, which will be led, the prayer will be led by Ben Geboe. We hope that this series brings you peace and well-being, and know that we are also thinking of you. Newa, thank you for listening, and stay well.
Okay, Ben, one of the reasons I wanted to engage with you today is that you're a community member, and we first met each other within a social service organization. Safe Harbors is not a social service organization. It is a Native-specific theater performance group, and we are concerned about all our community members, not only urban, but also rural. And so I just wanted to check in with you. And since you are a board member for Safe Harbors of New York City, I was wondering if there was any thoughts or any ideas that you had for us, Safe Harbors, through performance, to be able to, in our way, in the Native way, of course, performance, how we could express what has been going on, even like some of your experiences, how we might be able to possibly through a workshop, some kind of venue like that, or even performance, reflect what you're going through. Because it's very important for us as a community to try to support each other through this very difficult time. So do you have any thoughts?
Yes. Hello, everybody. My name is Ben Geboe. Tiospe mitawa he wakankadi duta. I'm originally from South Dakota. I grew up in Rosebud, and I'm enrolled in the Yankton Sioux tribe of South Dakota. And that's right, when I came to New York, we met at the American Indian Community House. And that started out my profession of being, helping others. I was a community health representative, and I'm doing social work. And yeah, there's a lot of questions that, I think all communities struggle with during this time, on not just how to cope with the fear and the anxiety, but also how is this going to impact us as a community? Yeah. And I think doing podcasts like this one that you're doing now is a very important, activity to document how we're, feeling about things and how we're experiencing things and what we're doing, because that documentation then serves us for now. We're expressing how we feel, but also in the future, that we have this legacy of coming together and being a Native community in the urban setting, which, we're a very small community.
Yeah.
So we're often not even thought of in the milieu of diversity.
Yeah.
So it's really important for us to then take a minute and say for ourselves, this is, what we're going through. It's happening to us individually. It's happening to us as a community, just like everyone else.
Yeah. Earlier, you and I were discussing about just basic ways of how Safe Harbors of New York City might be able to, through performance, be able to um, document what we're going through. You said something very interesting about archiving these experiences. And I agree with you. I think it's important that maybe we'll look back on this in a year or so and see possibly what are the differences of what is occurring now, the anxieties, the stresses that all of our community members are experiencing now, and possibly build from there. So could you, in your own way, discuss a little bit more about archiving and what that might entail as far as Safe Harbors of New York City and performance, Native specific performance might be. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Right. So some of it is what we're doing right now, which
Yeah.
is recording, our experiences and our thoughts about, what is happening during the quarantining, during the epidemic. But it's also, a very specific point of view. We're not just joining another group. We're the public of New York.
Yes.
We're actually saying, oh, we're Indigenous and we're doing this to create a record
Yes.
of experience. So that's a very important part of what the urban community can do for the future. As you know, the American Indian Community House had a gallery for almost 40 years, and we have probably the largest collection of Indigenous art, Native American art in the United States, because of all of the different artists that have come through at different times. And so what you guys are doing now with Safe Harbors, what we're trying to do is achieve that same sense of being able to really document what's happening. What, how are we dealing with stuff? I know from the Native perspective, I'm on these Facebook groups and social media groups around Indigenous culture, and some of the humor that's been coming through has been kind of like, oh, the government won't let you, leave your home, and, you're, considered an infectious agent. You relax, you've only been an Indian for 4 weeks. It's like we know about surveillance, we know about epidemics, changing everything,
Yes.
making us, question whether or not we know the environment we live in.
Yes.
This environmental change. So I think that, the Indigenous perspective would be, yes, the history is built upon our demise from early contact illnesses, and intentional genocide was perpetrated using, bioweapons like smallpox. And,
yes.
So there's a long history of us having, and we heard that with the HIV, when HIV started popping up. How is it going to bring it, be at home? How are we going to deal with this, unknown, and there's a lot of type of similar fears. The big difference is everybody seems to be kind of experiencing it in very different ways.
Yeah. In that same vein, we here in the New York City community, Native community, we've lost several community members. One most recently, and which breaks my heart, has been Kevin Tarrant, who is the co-founder with Muriel Borst Tarrant, and he was also the managing director of Safe Harbors of New York City. Now, we all knew him, and would you, if you could, share maybe one or two experiences that you have had with him? Because Kevin was one of those individuals. He was flexible, he was personable, he would engage with anyone. And but he was also very willing to educate people. He was very ardent about education, um, and allowing people to learn. So I recall, I'll just, cue you on this, that I recall you telling me that he actually allowed you and invited you to sit with and sing with the drum and practice with his drum. So would you just sort of expand on that thought about how he's inclusive and how it was, he was willing to share what he had in order to expand in a lot of different ways, Native education in the Native way?
Yeah, he was a tremendous contributor to the Indigenous community, not just in providing that instruction on the drum,
Mhm.
traditional singing, um, but also just showing up and being a person who participates
Yes.
over a period of time. Because sometimes, we all get busy in life and we're very active in the Indigenous community, and then maybe we're at school or working or we're doing other things personally that we don't participate. But he was over a continuum of time, showing up and really modeling, I think, what it's like to be a person who is an advocate by being there.
Hmm.
And his leadership, of the community house, but also just of the drum group and of, men, it was a very important thing for us to have. Because sometimes we get people that are very damaged,
Yeah.
and they come to the urban setting because they've been run out of their home community.
Yeah.
Nobody wants them anymore back home. So
Yeah.
they end up in New York where they're back in the Native community, and they can be very mean, or they
Uh-huh.
can be very, there's a story there. And Kevin was very functional and contributing in such a positive way. And I actually have some sage and
Yes. Nice.
feather, and then we're going to burn this and to think of him and to think that we think of him and his beautiful family and the
Yeah.
legacy of the urban Indian is kind of embodying that. And I remember him telling me one time when we were drumming that he was hanging out at the community house with Lance Richmond, and they were supposed to go walk around town. It was a beautiful day in New York, and everybody was out on the street, and Lance was just hanging around the community house with his mom, and then they just thought, okay, here we go. New York City is happening out there. We're young, we should be out, but we're going to just stay here and let that world go on by. And they visited her from one of our Dakota communities, which is my nation is Dakota. We're related to the Lakota and Dakota, but we're Dakotas who came and taught them songs.
Ah.
So it was either from Minnesota or maybe even Manitoba. But the idea is that, out of skipping out of running around New York and kind of being in this, to be young in New York and to then get access to very traditional Dakota songs
Uh-huh.
was like a very meaningful
Uh-huh.
experience when he shared that,
Mm-hmm.
that, that we have a richness, we have a
Mm-hmm.
depth. It's a tangible culture and a tangible community.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing about Kevin is that with Muriel, they founded Safe Harbors of New York City in 2016. And one of the biggest accomplishments that will continue was the Reflection of Native Voices, which was held on January 7th through the 19th, 2020, this year. And it was a 2-week festival of Native playwrights, actors, producers, directors, and song makers. And this festival, which was the first of its kind in New York City, specifically for Native theater performance, um, it was presented through the lenses of creative expression and cultural perseverance. Native performing artists explored original Native material in a cultural exchange involving new plays, directing, workshops, and song making. Now, these performances and workshops were held at La Mama Experimental Theater, New York Theater Workshop and Theater for the New City, and the Carriage House. So that was one of Kevin's, he was not only a drummer, a singer, but an artist, a performer, an activist, and he has left this legacy to continue, and which I'm very grateful for. So let's just hope that we will be able to uphold what he was, and continue what he was able to do. Me as the ensemble member, part of the performing company, you as a board member, we'll continue that. So thank you for sharing this time with me. Just a brief moment that we had, just to check in, with you. And I would also like to ask you to go ahead and offer a prayer in Lakota to those of us who are still here, who are contending with this pandemic, and for those of us that we have lost, like Kevin, who, again, it's very difficult for me to say, right? It's very difficult for me because he is very close to me, but who we lost. And for those that have gone on, who walked on, would you please just offer something so that we can all, in some ways, whether it's still alive or have walked on, be still a community?
Yeah, it's a great honor. So I'm going to light some sage.
Okay.
We'll pray. And I know people at home, if you have tobacco or sage, you can join by offering a prayer. And you can join by thinking of our dear friend and the impact he made on the city.
Yes.
And our Native community.
Yes.
Is preserved, and it is something real.
Yes.
And it's something that will continue as we think of him and call forth, in not just remembrance, but also because he's still with us. I really believe that.
Yeah.
And of course, I pray for his lovely wife and daughter and family and people back home, as well as people in New York.
Yes.
So, he helped me see that, we're often idealizing the Indigenous experience based on what happens back on the res or in Native areas. But he helped me see too, no, we're a Native community here, and this is a Native area, and this is who we are. So he helped me make that integration instead of it being a separate thing. And that is something that I really think is his greatest legacy. So we'll pray. Toka Shilan Shilapo Toka Shilamak Midakwase. Grandmother, grandfather, we thank you for all that we have. We say thank you to all the things that fly, all the things that crawl, all the things that are the stone, the river, the mountain, the Tate Topa, the four winds. We think of our relatives that have gone before us and formed circles. We think about people that are within our circle right now. And we think about people that will continue to form circles after we are gone. And we pray for the well-being and continuation of our people, the Oyate, the first people of this land. And we hope that anybody who's in trouble or is lonely or is upset, that they can get some kind of relief, especially during this time. We pray for the young, we pray for the elderly. Amen.
Mado Yokoki, thank you, Ben, for spending this brief moment with me. Thank you for allowing me to check in with you. Thank you for sharing what you shared. And I also just want to remember and to bring into this space the Safe Harbors of New York City ensemble members, which are Danielle, John Scott, Peace, Sam, Josie, Muriel, Kevin. Miss him, love him, and thank you for this time. And we will be back with other interviews, other check-ins with other community members. And this is the first of what is called 500 Years and Counting virtual series. So thank you for joining both me and Ben. And on behalf of Safe Harbors of New York City, I wish you well. I wish you safety. I wish you strength. All of you, be well.